Good morning, everyone. In Ireland, they're going into lockdown tomorrow. Tomorrow. In Ontario, today. Ireland, tomorrow. Interestingly, this is pointed out by Fat Emperor. Quote, there were 1,137 free beds in hospitals on Christmas Eve morning. COVID-19 patients accounted for only 10% of all patients in critical care, and 62 critical care beds were vacant. But yet, they want ruinous, unscientific lockdowns to start tomorrow. Ours started today. Here's our numbers. Canada, COVID-19 cases in Canada. Ontario doesn't have a label. I don't know why, but it's here. Right under Quebec. And this isn't what a pandemic looks like. This isn't what a pandemic looks like. This is not what a pandemic looks like. I don't care I don't care what the news says. Those numbers don't back up the reactions from our government. It's incredible. It's incredible what's happened. Ford orders lockdown for all of Ontario starting Boxing Day. All of Ontario will move into a lockdown on Boxing Day and in a bid to curb climbing COVID-19 case numbers and spare hospitals and their intensive care units from being inundated in January, Premier Doug Ford said. This is garbage. It's always 2 weeks away and it never happened. We're trying to save these guys? Are you kidding? Really? Like, I have no interest in trying to save the dancing nurses here, right? Like, this is just offensive. This isn't, oh no, save them. This is completely unprofessional and inappropriate. And the fact that we're 10 months into this, and what they're doing is now being stricter on small businesses than they have ever been previously. We heard this was coming in the leaked letter. Why are we allowing this? Where are the legal challenges, right? Where are the bans of businesses saying we're all going to open up? You can fine us every single day, and you can take your fines, and we'll see you in court. And we will gum up your courts. They can't continue to do this if a bunch of people stand up. However, they did have riot police and mounted police show up to Adam Skelly's barbecue. So it's not without risk. It's not without real threat to your livelihood and to your everything, reputation, everything, right? To your business. It's very concerning because how do you stand up to this, right? How do you stop this from happening? Because it's you try and support local businesses. You try and support the local hardware stores, the pet stores, or whatever, or anybody else, and it's made impossible, really, like completely impossible, right? How, like, for people who don't operate online? Oh yeah, just go to online and curbside pickup, no problem. Like, no, that is a problem. That is not easy. It's very, very frustrating. Anyway, the announcement comes as Ontario recorded 2,123 more COVID-19 cases, and new modeling painted a grim picture of intensive care units overwhelmed with coronavirus patients if further restrictions aren't implemented. What models? Toss out these models. And anybody who suggests we should go by these models should be immediately fired. And anybody who they employ also fired. Gone. Cut them right off. Like a gangrene limb, right? See you later. Bye. Get lost. The models are bullshit. The models are absolute bunk, and they're being sold to us like they're never been wrong. They've been wrong every time. Every single time they've been wrong. Oh, don't worry. Viruses don't understand borders, but we're going to close the U.S. border. It's racist to close the border to Chinese planes, but we're going to close the border to UK planes. What in the world? Why are we allowing our government to abuse us so much? Is this the classic example of battered wife syndrome? Right? Like, it's okay enough just to, if we don't make them angry, if we comply, okay, we'll put the mask on. Okay, we'll stand outside and wait in your bread lines. Okay, we'll close our business. Okay, it's wintertime, maybe keeping people outside is not a health and safety measure. I don't know, it's pretty not great, right? Like, if it's minus 20 outside and you got to stand in line to get your bread, that's not so good, right? Like, this government is not in it for you, and it's maddening. Overwhelmed with coronavirus patients. I scoff. Anyway, the lockdown will begin at 12:01 a.m. on December 26th and remain in place until at least January 23rd, 2021 in the 27 public health units that comprise Southern Ontario, the government says. In Ontario's north, where daily case numbers have been significantly lower, the lockdown is set to expire January 9th, 2021. What's the goal? What is the goal? Like, to flatten the curve. They say to flatten the curve here, but it's garbage. Ford said people should only leave home for essential trips such as work or groceries. However, the lockdown doesn't include curfew or travel restrictions. We've flattened the curve before and we can do it again, said Health Minister Christine Elliott. For the 5 regions already under grey lockdown zone, Toronto, Peel region, York region, Windsor, Essex, and Hamilton, the new measures will not look much different than what is currently in place. However, the new measures also mean non-essential businesses must close. Why? If under grey lockdown they didn't have to close before, why are they changing the rules now? Ridiculous and not scientific. Essential businesses that remain open will now have a stricter capacity limits than the ones already in place in the lockdown zones. Discount and big box retailers will now only be limited to 25% capacity, while grocery stores and pharmacies will be limited to 50% capacity. Why? Stand outside and wait, because, science. Garbage. Hardware stores and pet stores will not be deemed essential under new measures and must switch to curbside pickup and delivery. Again, this has not happened yet, right? Even at when we knew the least about this, they didn't close hardware stores and pet stores. And now, in this lockdown, when they don't have the data to back any of this garbage up, they're becoming more draconian on these stores? Come on. Casinos, indoor sports facilities, personal care services such as salons will be shuttered when new restrictions kick in. There was a way to keep these open in grey lockdown under the provincial framework. The province just threw out any kind of trust that small business could have in them and changed the rules on everyone for nothing. For these dancing fools, right? For these dancing idiots, morons. Just ridiculous. Absolutely no credibility. This is no more lockdown saying. The Ontario Hospitals Association is leading the call for lockdowns, and the links to that. But why? Capacity is better than in the last 4 years. OHA is negotiating funding. Capacity is ample, 2 COVID patients per hospital, plus 0.5 in the ICU per Ontario hospitals. Look, and I've shown all this data before, and I thought this was scrubbed, but it's not. I'm glad to see this chart. Same one that I showed. 80% capacity at this point in time because of the increased beds. They said at the beginning as well, we'd need 900 beds, 900 beds to deal with capacity. The model said. Do you remember that? I showed it. I think I showed the article about it 2 or 3 days ago. But it said 900 beds needed according to models. Do we have 900 beds? Nope. Are we over capacity? No. Nope, not close. What in the world are we allowing our government to do? Lock us down, shut our businesses down, remove our ability to make income, remove our ability to provide for our family. For what? They're lying. They're lying liars, and they're lying. Here's a doctor in the University of Toronto saying his ward isn't overwhelmed. Here's the Toronto dashboard from just before the lockdown. I don't know what the date is. Is it on there? I can't see it. But that's the same. That's similar to what I was looking at before. They changed those numbers to yellow as well. This went up to 87 and it was yellow, or 88 and it was yellow, and this was I think 88 as well, maybe 89, and it was yellow. So they changed the goalpost, right? It's incredible what's happening. Here's the current stats in Guelph. 1 person's died. We had 10 in the hospital in Guelph. Before Christmas, probably the 24th. I've been trying to take pictures, but I meant to do it every day, but I haven't been doing it every day. I feel like I should do it every day for the lockdown and map it for people and just say, maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll do a video where it just shows going through the lockdown, what's happened to the hospital numbers in Guelph, because this is just wild. The fatal cases still have more fatal cases as of July 14th via overdose deaths in Guelph than COVID-19 in the end of December 2020. So COVID-19's run for an entire year and it's killed 13 people. And how many businesses has it destroyed? How many places has it shut down? How many people's lives has this lockdown negatively impacted? How many people have killed themselves? Like, this is absolutely incredible, right? Like, this is what we're shutting down our entire culture, our entire economy for? For what? For what? Because we believe the models? Here's Kulvinder Kaur, and she says, Italian judges ruling in Court of Rome, quote, no ordinary law which attributes power to the Prime Minister and Council of Ministers to declare state of emergency due to health risks. In short, COVID restrictions are unconstitutional, according to this court. I hope that at some point somebody in Canada rules on this, and they rule in a way that's not obviously biased. Like we've seen lots and lots of activist judges make rulings that are eyebrow raising, and had premiers who have used the notwithstanding clause to say, well, okay, maybe those constitutional rules are violated, but we're going to notwithstanding push through. But in this situation, the premier is the one taking the civil rights, and the court is the one we're relying on to restore them. And it seems obvious, but if you've been paying attention, things that the public thinks are obvious, or things that I think that the public thinks are obvious, the court has been getting wrong recently, right? It seems like more activist judges are in positions of power, and I don't think that's accidental. I don't. Here's another example of pandemic profiteering, but off the backs of taxpayers. I wonder if Jagmeet Singh knows about any of this. He's the one who's enabling this, right? We got to get the money out fast. We've got to get the money out in a way that's not a barrier to getting money out, right? But in the way that it's been rolled out, we've been enabling massive paydays to shareholders of big companies, while also supervising or overseeing a lot of death in long-term care homes, right? Like we're just shoveling money out the door for terrible, terrible results. Here's Keith Leslie says Extendicare, Sienna Senior Living, and Chartwell Retirement Residences in their first 3 quarters of 2020, ending September 30th, collectively paid out nearly $171 million to shareholders, while at the same time taking $138.5 million in pandemic funding from taxpayers. I wonder, like, if that's from different buckets, right? Like the taxpayer money was necessary to survive, and the shareholder payouts were the results of the taxpayer money they took that was necessary to survive and give the payouts. I guess. Who knows? Who knows? I don't know how people can justify that. It's a little bit, no, I do know, right? Like they have a lawyer or an accountant who says, A plus B equals lots of money for the shareholders and everybody's happy, right? You take advantage of the government program. You say we used it to the best of our ability. The shareholders get a big payday and everybody's happy. The government thinks it did its job. The shareholders think you did your job. The public thinks, this is a good, responsible corporation that took care of its workers. Everybody wins, except that it's a facade, right? It's not real. Or it's real enough until somebody digs into it and says, hey, wait a second. A lot of that, adds up, right? Very interesting, and doesn't seem any way to fix it, right? Because the loophole was there, people took advantage of it, the payouts have been given. What are you going to do, right? And I'm not shrugging my shoulders saying this is not a big deal. I'm saying, what are you going to do? It's done now, right? The government's either done this on purpose or by mistake, and the loopholes were allowed to continue, and the shareholders have been paid off. And the Toronto Star has written an article about it, giving a slight black eye to the public image, but the shareholders got paid off, and the government thinks it did its job, so everybody's going to carry on. Like somebody said, hey, doesn't that medication work for helping COVID-19, right? Oh, what medication? That's fake news. Moving on. Or they don't even do that. They just ignore it. Canada's actively monitoring new coronavirus variants. I wanted to highlight this because it says mutations, which are small changes in the genetic material, says Global News, of the virus, are common during outbreaks. While early data suggests that these new variants may be more transmissible, to date there's no evidence that these variants cause more severe disease symptoms or have any impact on antibody response, PHAC said, adding that more research was necessary. So the reason that the flu, year to year, you have to get different flu vaccines, and they develop different flu vaccines for different strains of flus, because every year it's a different strain of flu. That's just a mutation. It's the same thing. And they're trying to use this to relock us down, because if anybody who knows about health, etc., and I've been reading lots of doctors, and I'm not a doctor, so please, what I'm saying is opinion based on what I've been reading. So I'm not a doctor. This isn't absolutely correct, but after you get the flu, right? After you've had the flu, you're immune to it again that year. That's what herd immunity is, right? Everybody gets the immunity to the flu, and then the flu just kind of evaporates, right? The transmission chains have been broken, and until the flu mutates again, which always happens because it's a virus, it's a coronavirus, that always happens, and restarts those chains of transmission, then it's gone. And people don't get sick from that so much anymore, right? Not to say there aren't going to be small outbreaks in places that haven't been exposed to it. There may be, but it's minimal, and you can see how the flu has behaved for the last 100 years. Now, what was crazy about COVID-19 was the fact that it was novel, and people didn't know how it was going to behave. But it looks like, it looks like it only affects very, very old people in old age homes, generally, or people with a lot of comorbidities. And really, when you look at the death numbers, are you talking about a pandemic here? 5 in the hospital, 13 cases dead, 14 people have died of drug overdoses. How many people have died of heart attack or heart disease or cancer, right? this is not something to lock our entire economy and country down for, to remove our culture, right? Here's another thing that I think is very interesting. I don't know that year to year you can just use the same flu vaccine. But this person says, while not impossible, mutations affecting the efficacy of vaccine is doubtful, according to Levon Abram, a virologist at the University of Montreal. The first doses of Moderna's vaccine arrived in Canada on Thursday, with the rollout set to begin next week. So he's saying that basically the vaccine will work. Just, this mutation is nothing. Don't worry about it. The vaccine will work. So, and the mutation is this big deal in England right now. They've locked down flights from England into Canada. A whole bunch of places have restricted travel. This isn't getting more free. This isn't getting better. The more you give them, the more they take, right? And the less they, to go back to my Stalin reference the other day, the plucked chicken, right? The plucked chicken and the handful of wheat. The more they take away from you, the less wheat they give you, right? And the more they expect you to believe them. It's very, very, wow. I mean, what's happening? And people just are eating it up, to continue with the analogy. New York Post is reporting Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine causing more allergic reactions than expected. I don't know why there's a swimming dog there, but anyway. That's interesting. But basically, yeah, the allergic reactions are more, and that's not great. That's not great. I'm not going to get into that too much. Oops, I didn't mean to remove that. Because, well, what did happen to Tiffany Dover? I don't know. Kian Bext is keeping up with the Joneses, and here's some spray paint on an Alberta home. It says, snitch bitch 403. And Kian says, looks like COVID tattle told on the wrong folks. And yeah, I mean, that's not great for social cohesion, right? Trust your neighbors. No. And I've been saying before, this is Fauci speaking about asymptomatic spread, and he says, in all the history of respiratory borne viruses of any type, asymptomatic transmission has never been the driver of outbreaks. And that's what I was saying. That's what the WHO says. Like, it's not that it doesn't necessarily happen. It could happen, right? Like if you're asymptomatic and going to be symptomatic, like if you haven't had symptoms yet, then that's a potential for an asymptomatic spread. If you have an encounter with somebody, say from a bar late in an evening, right? You go home and then all of a sudden you get sick. That could happen, right? Sure, I'm not going to say that couldn't happen, but driving a pandemic to the point of locking us down, it doesn't make logical sense. They can't back it up. The data doesn't back it up. And that's kind of the foundation of all of this, right? Here's an interesting note because, well, National Post is reporting Jesus is the most popular among older Canadians, Albertans, and Christians. Poll finds. Yes, Jesus is the most popular among older Canadians, Albertans, and Christians. Shocking. And Leslyn Lewis, the reason I'm including this is because Leslyn Lewis was a leader for the contender for the CPC leadership. And she says, I'm interested to see the results of the same poll conducted for other religions on their holy days. Please use the same questions whether their savior or prophet is popular with their faith. I'll wait with bated breath. And, I mean, she makes a good point. It's very, very rare to see other religions questioned on the popularity of their religious figures on their big holy days. But this is what the National Post thought would be great to run on Christmas Day. Very, very, very odd. Just, I mean, again, I understand what's going on, right? I get it. But to people who maybe don't get it, wouldn't that be an odd thing to run about, like, any other group in Canada, any other not noticeable group, but any other large group, right? Like, it would be odd. It would be a very strange thing to point out. Mercedes Stevenson says, our Global News special in conversation with the Prime Minister airs today on Global News, shot in -20 because of COVID. What a year to review. Is this, masks don't work, 6 feet doesn't work? Why outside? How does this make any kind of sense at all? -20 to do an interview? This is nothing but, did you watch The Hunger Games? I like The Hunger Games, the first book. I didn't like the trilogy. I liked the first book. I thought the first book was interesting. But in the Hunger Games, it's a lot of when they go to the Capitol and they do a pantomime show. It's just to show off the contestants and to get the public to buy in, right? It's all propaganda. That's what this is. This is propaganda. This is not anything to do with reality. I don't think that people who can see the data that I can see can reasonably make the decisions that they're making without having some kind of alternate agenda. It doesn't make logical sense. It doesn't make logical sense for Doug Ford to shut the province. It doesn't make logical sense for leaders of communities like Guelph or Durham Region or Peel to not stand up and want their businesses running. It doesn't make sense for people to cower at home. This is never how we've responded to anything. And there's no science to show it works. Where's this follow-up study on the efficacy of the first lockdown? What were the stated goals of the first lockdown? To flatten the curve? Okay. Did that have anything to do with the seasonality of the thing? Does the flat curve in Victoria, the one they're saying the lockdowns work, have anything to do with the fact that they're coming out of their flu season? All of this, it stinks to high heaven. It absolutely reeks. People are just lying. Stay home, stay safe. 680 News is reporting police investigating after shots fired into a Etobicoke home. Darn it! If it's not the virus this year, yeah, man, that's a lot of bullshit. That's a lot of bullets, right? I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16? That's a lot of bullets, man. That's a lot of bullets. Etobicoke. Yeah, I mean, that used to be kind of the safe area, or one of the safe areas. That used to be a suburb of Toronto, right? You didn't used to have shootings there. Climate Paris Agreement will cut just 1% of what is needed to get 1 to 1.5 degrees Celsius. It will cost $1 to $2 trillion per year by 2030. Ha! If you think this is getting less expensive, I mean, never mind wanting to go to work. You'll want to stay in your home. Oh yeah, sure. Tax me for staying at home. Oh, okay. Now instead of taxing me, you're just gonna buy one of the rooms in my home. Okay, sure. Why not? Yeah. Communism. Why not? Right? Just stay asleep until it's too uncomfortable to do anything about. And then by then it's too late. I mean, it might already be too late. It's not a coincidence, says Dan McTeague. He's responding to Shannon saying, "We are carbon about 18% per human. Why are they charging us to be alive?" Carbon taxes are anti-human. And I've talked about this before. If you understand that humans are carbon-based life forms, we're a carbon-based world. And they're just charging for air, charging for breath, charging for existing. And Dan says it's not a coincidence. Behind all of this lurks their desire for population reduction and control, as the hydrocarbons they once argued had peaked are at the center of improving human condition, quality, and longevity of life. So really, the richer you are, the more CO2 you use, because it's not zero, right? Like you breathe, you exist, you eat meat, you have a house, you live in a house, you live in a building that was built with carbon, like you take up carbon as you exist. And so the more of that you have, the more access to that you have, the more wealth you have, the more likely it is your human longevity, you'll live longer, right? The health is wealth. Okay, that's not my statement. That's many TED Talks talk about how we have to improve, like rapidly transform the economies of other countries in order to improve their health outcomes. And okay, sure, like that could be a theory, and etc. But the opposite is, I suppose, also true. If you cut us off at the knees and remove our ability and access to these hydrocarbons, then, well, I mean, you're watching what's happening, right? Our entire economy is. Have you been to Home Depot trying to get 2x4s or had work done on your house or anything to that effect, with access to stuff that was previously easy to get? Have you noticed that the supply chains, the food, there's more empty shelves? At Walmart the other day, there was no bread and there was no chicken. And I thought, that's interesting. And okay, they just announced this new lockdown. People are scared, so maybe they're panic buying, which is dumb, but okay. The last time, nothing broke down, but I guess we're 6 months on now, and all of the money is less. Cargill is shutting down due to, I think, asymptomatic testing, but I don't have proof of that yet. But it's a very, very serious situation because people don't make the connection that it's anti-human, but it is anti-human. It's very anti-human, and people don't get it. They think they're trying to create, well, they think green is some kind of positive virtue signal, right? Like they think that green is great, but green is really the new communism, right? And I do believe that. I do believe that. Here's Laurie Goldstein, and he says wind turbine blades can't be recycled, so they're piling up in landfills. Companies are searching for ways to deal with tens of thousands of blades that have reached the end of their lives. That's what I mean. They virtue signal and protect. It's just like the liberal tap dance, right? They think that things are one way, and they behave as if things are one way. That wind turbines remove CO2s from the atmosphere because they're an alternate source of power. But they conveniently ignore the fact that you need CO2 to produce these things. You need hots, which you can't produce from a windmill, right? And so to make these things, you still need CO2. And often the CO2 that is used to create these things, if you take the amount of energy they create over their lifetime and compare to the CO2, you probably would have just been better, and this is according to Planet of the Humans, so I'm quoting them, probably would have been better just to directly burn the hydrocarbons for energy anyway. So rather than going through this pantomime of making this thing that doesn't actually work and has to be buried in landfills because the blades aren't made of bamboo, right? CBC has a very 5 p.m. Yeah, this is the last one today. I thought this was funny just because I thought I could apply to this and just like mess with them. I wouldn't apply to this. CBC has a very 5 p.m. December 24th post drop rethinking the National into a more of talking heads endeavor. Can you imagine me and Greg on the National? Speaking moistly. Yeah, so they want a senior producer, talk programming, the National. I've got a couple of years experience of talk programming, from producing to starring. No, I don't want the job. But I think it's interesting that the CBC is burning $1.5 billion of Canadian taxpayer dollars a year, plus ad revenue. And they've got like less than 3% of the viewership because of all the crap virtue signaling and just terrible leadership. Have they fired that American president yet from this? Is she still living in the Bronx? What a joke. I mean, like, honestly, it would be funny, except that it's not funny at all because the leadership of our country is a joke. It's a joke. And the CBC is a joke, and the provinces are a joke. They don't have any kind of data to back up these draconian removal of our civil liberties, and yet they move forward with it anyway, pretending that they're doing us a favor when really, in reality, the adverse effects of lockdowns have been well documented in the newspaper, but not studied, ignored by our leaders in order to implement a second lockdown. For what purpose? You've got me. I don't know why anyone would abuse their citizens the way these leaders are abusing us, especially with examples like Florida and other major metropolitan areas that have been able to reopen with zero COVID restrictions with no problem. This defies reason and logic. This is unbelievable. Okay, that's enough of me. Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com. Check out CanadaReport.co. Check out SpeakingMoistly.co. And we're in lockdown. Call your MP, call your MPP, call your local representatives, every single one of them, and call them every day if you've got nothing to do. I'm thinking of calling around to local businesses and saying, hey, like, do you want to go sit out in front of the mayor's office and honk your horn for an hour with me every day? Because I don't know what else is going to work. I don't know what else is going to move the needle on anything. But if you get enough people, honking their horns, then maybe somebody will come out and find out what you want. I don't know. I don't know how to get out of this at this point in time. I hope that there's some direction soon, because intermittent lockdowns at the whim of the government for the rest of our lives, that's no way to live. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.